Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's a Taylor Swift album bomb on Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. I feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions here. On the one hand, one massive album bomb from a record-breaking re-release from Taylor Swift of an album that last time I heard it, I didn't really care for it. And it's paired with a minor album bomb from Silk Sonic that didn't get as much traction as it really should have. But hey, at least this allows for a relatively clean slate for the Hot 100, where we honestly did not get that many losers because Summer Walker took a bunch of them out last week, and whatever will be left will likely fall to Adele's album 30 in the week to come. And thus this big story crosses into our top 10, because we actually have a new number one, All Too Well, Taylor's Version by Taylor Swift, and by that she means the extended 10-minute song that breaks the record for the longest track to ever top the Hot 100. Now, I'll get more into the track itself much later on, but I do kind of appreciate Taylor Swift breaking all conventions surrounding song length and what can be considered a hit, even if the industry is likely just going to consider it a one-week anomaly on obscene streaming and sales, because coming back right next week with Strength in All Quarters, we'll have Easy on Me by Adele, currently at number 2. It's nearly taken the top spot on the radio, and with the album bomb coming, it's gonna go back to number 1. Really Stay by Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber at number 3, it doesn't stand a chance to make more of a move anymore. Despite holding the top radio position, it's losing traction in all channels. And well, Industry Baby by Lil Nas X and Jack Harlow only slipped down to number 4, its own radio stability is kinda compromised. What isn't is Smoking Out the Window by Silk Sonic up to number 5. Now, I'm under no illusions it's gonna last here unless the streaming traction continues, but it actually did get some radio momentum this week, and while it's probably gonna be slow going, might fall out of the top 10, I'm gonna hold out hoping that this is gonna become a hit. It's only growing on me with every passing listen. Hell, went right past Bad Habits and Shivers by Ed Sheeran at number 6 and number 7, the former making a slow radio exit while the latter loses a little bit of traction going up the charts. But then we got Heat Waves by Glass Animals up to number 8. Apparently the radio really threw a lot of weight behind this, so it's not going away either. Next up is Need to Know by Doja Cat at number 9. It's stable, but the radio traction seemed to peak this week, and to end things off, because radio is finally getting rid of it, Fancy Like by Walker Hayes. Not a minute too soon with this one, we could have gotten rid of this a month or two ago. Next we got our losers and dropouts. And again, Summer Walker already did a lot of damage last week. So in terms of the big dropouts, the majority we have is her album bomb, Traitor by Olivia Rodrigo, I Was on a Boat That Day by Old Dominion, A-OK by Ty Verdes, Memory I Don't Mess With by Lee Brice, Hurricane by Kanye West featuring Lil Baby and The Weeknd, Vulvi by Aventura and Bad Bunny, and Baddest by Young Bleu, Chris Brown, and 2 Chainz. Let's be honest, most of these were on their way out anyway. And that's true with the majority of our losers here as well. Fair Trade by Drake and Travis Scott at 86, Tequila Little Time by John Party at 89, Bubbly by Young Thug featuring Drake and Travis Scott at 91, Moth to a Flame by Swedish House Mafia and The Weeknd at 96, man, that did not catch on, Till You Can't by Cody Johnson at 97, Woman by Doja Cat at 98, and Take My Breath by The Weeknd at 99. Then we have whatever's left of Summer Walker's album bomb, with No Love with SZA at 56, and X for a Reason with JT at 92, and then we got losing off the debut, Escape Plan by Travis Scott at 71, and One Right Now by Post Malone and The Weeknd at 19. Outside of that, Chasing After You by Ryan Hurd and Maren Morris looks like it's going to be making its way out at 35. It's at its peak, time for Music Row to give it a slow, respectable exit. Now, we only had 3 new gains this week. Somehow Super Gremlin by Kodak Black caught a small boost to 82, and Thinking About You by Dustin Lynch and Mackenzie Porter got a mild jump to 30, but the bigger story here, Silk Sonic, with Leave the Door Open rebounding nicely to 23, and Skate even coming back to the Hot 100 at 75. Yes, All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey is back too at 36, but that's a demon we'll exercise in a couple of weeks, not now. But the much bigger story is Taylor Swift's album bomb, where she debuted a record-breaking 26 songs on the Hot 100. and most of them are below the top 40, thank God. So, in accordance with my rules, and discounting the songs that fell below the top 40 and are neither my best or my worst, here is that album bomb. Starlight at 90, Come Back, Be Here at 87, Sad, Beautiful, Tragic at 85, The Lucky One at 84. I used to hate this song, but it has gotten a little bit better with age. The Moment I Knew at 83, Forever Winter at 79, Begin Again at 77, Holy Ground at 76, Babe at 69. Jack Antonoff's production makes this Pat Monahan co-write actually better than Sugarland's version, I'll say that. Stay, Stay, Stay at 67, The Last Time with Gary Lightbody at 66, very nearly an honorable mention because they actually got the full crew back, including Jackknife Lee on production, and Lightbody and Swift's voices blend way better when they're a little bit older. Everything Has Changed with Ed Sheeran at 63, The Very First Night at 61, I Almost Do at 59, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together at 55, Treacherous at 54, 22 at 52, Better Man at 51, yeah, okay, I'll say it, this arrangement is better than the Little Big Town version, Run with Ed Sheeran at 47, and Message in a Bottle at 45. Oh god, that was way too much, and we still got a lot more in terms of new arrivals, but we're starting off with number 94, La Fama by Rosalia featuring The Weeknd.
Es demasiado traicionera y como ya viene se te va.
I'm always surprised to be reminded that the Rosalia and The Weeknd have actually worked together before on that remix of Blinding Lights, because otherwise I could be easily convinced that this is a collaboration that would be working incredibly well, and I'm surprised people hadn't gone to it before, beyond the fact that it would actually all be in Spanish. And yet this wasn't what I was really expecting. It's remarkably spare, leans into more of a rollicking bachata progression with the melody predominantly in a chopped up vocal sample, it's got more textured percussion, and only hints of The Weeknd's swampy atmosphere creeping in by his verse in order to support his willowy tones, which are unsurprisingly a pretty decent fit for this vibe. Now, I don't think either of them have as much interplay as I was really hoping, but I do actually like the melodramatic conceit of the lyrics, where they both have to deal with the succubus of fame, and they both play well into that more seductive vibe. But I don't know, the song does feel like it's missing something. Maybe a little bit more to play off the bass, a little bit more tune outside of that sample. I mean, it's not bad, but missing that bit to really pay off the collaboration put it over the top. Number 81, Fly As Me by Silk Sonic.
Somebody as fly as me, somebody this fly, and you deserve to be seen with somebody as fly as me.
Alright, we got some great songs from Silk Sonic here, all of which outside of 777 hit the Hot 100 this week, and this is one I like a great deal, but I'm not remotely surprised a pop audience hasn't grabbed onto it. This is primarily a splashy Anderson .Paak joint with a killer funk guitar and riding on impeccable swagger with a lot of horn embellishments, some terrific drum work, and more than a few silly flexes that soften the sheer egotism of this hook. They even get off with their own little spelling is fun, a third verse, speaking of Taylor Swift, that builds into a pretty explosive final hook riding the organ and the bass. Honestly, what it reminds me of the most is Come Down from Anderson .Paak's own Malibu back in 2016 that should have had all sorts of hits. And, you know, this probably won't be a hit, but it is great regardless. I like this. Number 78, Put On a Smile by Silk Sonic.
Trying to fight these tears from crying, but Lord knows I'm dying.
I go back and forth on whether this or Smoking Out the Window are my favorite songs on this album, and make no mistake, it is goddamn close. Put On a Smile is them making this slow burn, blues-inflected number post-breakup, where they have to feign happiness amidst a heartbreak that they may have actually initiated, a vibe that tends to be a real winner for me regardless of its genre, and yet when you pair it with the peeling guitar, the slow patter of texture percussion, more of a minor key progression, a terrific strings arrangement, and then the key change, I mean, goddamn, this sort of stylized melodrama is something that both men can knock out of the park, and it's a total winner for me. Honestly, might wind up on my year-end list of my favorite songs of 2021, not just the hits. We'll have to see. Number 73, Blast Off by Silk Sonic. So this is is the album closer for An Evening with Silk Sonic, and I've seen it get a decent amount of criticism for not really paying off the rest of the project, which to me feels a little bit off because when it comes to something that leans on psychedelic soul, they're riding off all the glossy synth, the supple bass, the guitar with a little bit more snarl and a haze of weed smoke, where they're just making that magic in the studio, Silk Sonic nailed that opulent, silky swell that of course lets them shred for another guitar solo. It's a sort of encore that the collab highlights that they might be short on the scene, but they'll fly back to their home planet with a great little taster. Maybe not my favorite on a stacked album. This still rules though. Great song. Number 68, After Last Night by Silk Sonic featuring Thundercat and Bootsy Collins.
I think I'm in love with you. Woke up and I can't get you out of my head. I've tried. Come on.
Who can't appreciate a fantastic post-sex jam full of simmering liquid bass courtesy of Thundercat, lush strings, chimes, terrific vocal harmonies off the horns, and a relentless horniness that has them throw the phone away in exultation on the first verse and then regret doing so on the second verse as that spacey synth splashes all the way through. Yeah, of course it's silly, and for some it might be a little bit too reminiscent of Dick in a Box, but that ridiculous cheese, complete with the shredding guitar solo, it's the entire appeal. Come on, get on board. And hell, who would not want to have sex that makes you feel like this? So yeah, also absolutely fantastic. Also not quite among my favorites of this album because it's goddamn stacked. Either way, I'm thrilled this is here. Can we make this a hit too? Number 53, Doing This by Luke Combs.
Still be doing this if I wouldn't do this.
So am I the only one a little bit amused that amidst the shock waves of album bombs, Luke Combs can just drop a song in the middle riding hype from the CMAs with perhaps the most tossed off title of his entire career? But I gotta appreciate that this song doesn't feel tossed off. It's a song where Luke Combs responds to a question of what he'd be doing if he wasn't a successful artist. And his answer is blunt, but painted with the sort of texture that I really liked. He'd still be an artist. He'd be playing the indie circuit, trying to make it work, sell CDs out of the trunk of his car, and he sells it with as much passion and fervor to make me believe that he'd absolutely do it, and he's got no shame in admitting it. It's a sentiment that feels very authentic because Luke Combs is showing himself to be one of the guys to uplift the indie country crowd with his platform, and when he pairs it with some great acoustic texture opposite the guitar sizzle and the pedal steel, it feels real, at least coming from him. Hell, I don't know what Luke Combs is promoting with this song, whether or not there's an album coming, but if songs like this are a sign for the future, I'm encouraged. This is great too. Number 49, Bad Man Smooth Criminal by Polo G.
Till they found him deceased, there's a whole lot of evil woman around in the streets. So you better look both ways, make your soul shake. Demon standing in the doorway. Tell me, honey, are you okay? Screaming out, no way. Tell me, honey, are you okay?
Was it a contractual obligation from the Jackson estate for Polo G to mention who he was sampling in the song title? A better question, why the hell is Polo G putting out a bloated deluxe edition of his last album set to release this year, which feels like flooding the market? Actually, even better question, why do you sample it and then only use it as the foundation for some pretty rote gunplay and you can't even make it run for 2 minutes? Seriously, I've seen TikTok hits that have more put into them, and while Polo G can ride the course and groove and the sharper trap progression pretty well, it feels like a pop swing that a record executive convinced him was a good idea rather than matching something that fits for Polo G's sound or vibe. In other words, again, it just feels wasteful. Especially when it's not that good. Just saying. Number 46, I Knew You Were Trouble, Taylor's version by Taylor Swift.
Now, flew me to places I've never been. Now I'm lying on the cold, hard ground.
It was never going to be the country songs that would be the issue for Taylor Swift's remakes. It was going to be the pop songs, especially the ones so indelibly dated to a specific time, and wow, I Knew You Were Trouble remains as crap as it was 9 years ago. Now look, I've gotten over my old issues with the song that put it on my year-end worst list in 2013. The whole, if you knew he was bad news from the start, why go for it? Because, okay, there can be some romanticism in chasing the wrong person for the wrong reasons, where it might make more emotional sense at the time. It's melodrama, pure and simple. The problem is that it's really bad melodrama, with some of Taylor Swift's most amateurish writing in her entire career that has her squeaking to fill up syllables on the verses, and then spawned endless GOAT remixes, including for this version, and a more adult-sounding voice now. It's not helping. Now, more to the point, wouldn't it have killed them to bring back Max Martin, if only so the drop doesn't sound like overcompressed ass? This era of dubstep has aged really, let's be charitable and say awkwardly as it is. So when the drop somehow only gets worse, you know you're in trouble. So yeah, this sucked in 2012 and 2013. It still sucks now. I guess we're glad we got that reminder. Number 43, Nothing New Taylor's Version by Taylor Swift featuring Phoebe Bridgers.
Me too, and will you still want me when I'm nothing new?
Okay, look, I get why Taylor Swift didn't release this in 2012. The Lucky One has a lot of parallels that make it clear that the subjects of legacy and longevity were clearly on her mind. But if she actually did write this back then, I'm a little bit surprised that she didn't put it out. Because it's outright excellent. Yeah, getting Phoebe Bridgers to play the young new star who has at least been partially inspired by Taylor, that's a win now. But there's a lot to like in the lyrical details regardless that Swift wrote herself. The men who tell women to have fun while they're young and then target them for doing so, and then sigh and say, oh, they've clearly been through it. Those who thought she was precocious when she was young, but immature and dramatic just a few years later. And then how the music industry muscles women out for someone who is younger and prettier along the way. Taylor might be the exception, but that's the point. She is the exception. I should also highlight the arrangement with co-production from Aaron Dessner, a lot of the spare acoustics, the fragile strings, and the intense intimacy of the vocal production, especially off the touches of pianos. It's just perfect for this sort of half-drunken moment of revealing honesty that Taylor Swift has only polished in the years that follows. So yeah, you know what, if there's a reason to get behind this re-release, I think it's this. It's a great song. Next up, number 25, Red, Taylor's Version by Taylor Swift.
It was dark, gray, all alone. Forgetting him was like trying to know somebody you never met.
Okay, full disclosure, this is a song that nearly got there for me back in 2012. The gallop of the pop country groove, potent as hell. I like the comparison structure that builds into the colors off the hook. But oh god, the stuttered repetition of the word red just killed it for me. Even with the over-polished sparkle coming off the bridge as the guitars and strings really opened up. And unfortunately, this highlights that persistent issue with the remake of Red, that some of the pop touches have aged really poorly. So even if Taylor Swift sounds a lot better and the mix has more presence and color, it still feels like it's being tugged back to all the old choices that didn't work 9 years ago and don't work now. So no, it's not bad. I don't think this was ever bad, but I still think it's a missed opportunity to not make this sound better. That's all. Number 22, I Bet You Think About Me, Taylor's Version by Taylor Swift featuring Chris Stapleton.
Believe when you realized I'm harder to forget than I was to leave, and I bet you think about me.
I bet folks will look at the credits of this song and will think that I have to like this. After all, it's got Chris Stapleton on the backing vocals, co-produced by Aaron Dessner, and oh look, it's a co-write in 2012 with Lori McKenna, coming off of her best album, Lorraine, of 2011. That was one of the best albums of the 2010s, and it proves that Taylor Swift had some legit great taste and has had for nearly a decade, and yet I don't really think this works. Mostly for a lot of the same reasons We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together doesn't work with the benefit of history and Taylor Swift's older sounding voice. This was made to be more of a petulant kiss-off, likely targeted at Jake Gyllenhaal years after the fact with his connections and his hipster taste. Oh, wait. See, that's the frustrating thing with Taylor Swift playing the every girl. Even by the time of Red, it was starting to wear kind of thin, and a kiss-off like this kind of exposes it both then and now. And I gotta say it, I'm not sure the actual arrangement works as well either. The harmonicas are really cute, but the groove never really locks in for me. I don't love the hook, and Chris Stapleton on backing vocals without letting him bring some firepower and soul feels like a waste of your Chris Stapleton. I'm not saying it's bad, it's cute, the writing is good, but I'd be a lot more interested in what Taylor Swift would write with Lori McKenna now rather than in 2012. I'll say that. Number 20, Already Dead by Juice WRLD.
Watch me dead, bitch, I'm already dead. I've been dead for years.
Let's cut to the chase. This is gross. It was just a matter of time, and in 2020 it might have looked a little better, but it looks like Juice WRLD's exploitative label situation that I was calling out in 2019 is now in the XXXTentacion cash-in stage of re-releasing songs from fragments. Is it even worth me commenting on the piano loop, the cheap stock percussion, or the cruddy vocal mixing on the pre-chorus? Or should we just focus in on the horrible lines in the second verse where he's only here by popular demand, I'm staying alive for the fans? Or the focal line in the hook, bitch, I'm already dead. I've been dead for years. You just know that some sleazeball at Grade A or Interscope thought those lines were money given that he passed away. But given that the song was in the works in 2018, it takes all the drugged out numbness and replaces it with the cheapest and most tasteless punchline possible, one that he likely never intended. So yeah, trash. Number 18, State of Grace, Taylor's version by Taylor Swift. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that the album opener is going to be one of the highest debuts. It's what it's like with these sorts of album bombs. But considering this was a cut that leaned heavier on rock elements, I was curious how they would interpolate the production. Now, obviously, Taylor Swift is a more expressive singer for this sort of sweeping, love-struck song. On the original, she was kind of buried halfway in between the backing singers. It didn't sound that good. But I gotta say, I really do like how the drums sound considerably more crisp and the guitars ring out as brighter with just a little bit more feedback seeping into the mix. The entire song feels more airy, but also packs more of a punch, and that's a neat balance to pull off. But I also gotta say, there is a reason why this song doesn't usually come up in conversations about Red. It's just the sort of opener that lacks the extra gear to put it over the top, and it kind of remains a little bit underwhelming, even with the newer mix. It's certainly better, I'd call it good now, but I'm not sure I'm going back to it. I'll say that. And finally, number 1, All Too Well, Taylor's version by Taylor Swift.
Cause you were looking over at me, wind in my hair, I was there, I remember it all too well.
And now we got the big one. The one that to many diehard Taylor Swift fans they'd call the best in her catalog, and Swift chose to provide the extended version of the song along with a short film to flesh out the story and trigger an onslaught of death threats at Jake Gyllenhaal. And here's my opinion on the original version of the song. It's pretty good. I mean, it wasn't my favorite from Red in 2012, still isn't now, even if I would argue that the weight of history and Taylor Swift's improvements as a singer, they do give it more weight as she traces through the relationship with so many personal details. I appreciate how tactile the song feels. I like that Taylor Swift wants to go back before this heartbreak to a more innocent self, but she can't, because that's how some relationships will change you. And I appreciate how so many moments of this history can't be forgotten by either of them. But let me be blunt here. All Too Well still has that odd sense of adolescence in the poetry and framing, where with maturity, Taylor Swift would continue to improve and write songs like Champagne Problems that touch similar territory. I mean, the adolescence is part of what gives the song its power, don't get me wrong, but it felt a little limiting for me in 2012, and 9 years later, hasn't really changed. Now for the extended cut, she actually went to get Jack Antonoff to co-produce this for a more spacious arrangement, and that's both a blessing and a curse, because while Jack Antonoff is a good producer that gives the percussion more space on a mix that can carry a song of this length, it feels more epic. But to paraphrase my colleague Rodrigo Pasta, Jack Antonoff's not really good at filling up some of that space with more in the composition. Take between the chorus and that first bridge. If there is a place to add some strings or horns or a little bit more distinctive melody in the guitar, that's where you do it, but there's just nothing there. But the entire mix feels kind of lacking some of that organic texture that worked for the original, or hell, even Taylor's shorter version on the album. Just some of that burnished warmth that made me think that maybe Aaron Dessner might have been a better choice for this, especially around some of the backing vocals. But then we get the extra verses, which are honestly kind of hit and miss too. I don't mind that the song is much sharper in its targeted takedown of Jake Gyllenhaal, especially citing the details about faking feminism, still all too common of the hipsters of that era. and of them now, and then charming her family only to let her down by not showing up for her birthday party, and that leads to a great musical pause moment after the 4th verse with moments from her father. But by the time we get to the 6th verse, and that extended outro, I mean, you've already landed the haymaker. It just pulls the song back into the meandering that inspired Liz Rose to help pare the song down in the first place. So yes, the extended version's good, like the original, but new strengths also reveal some new weaknesses. But it's also not my favorite Taylor Swift song. I stand by that. I get why it would be, but not for me. But still, that was a lot. And I will say it's a pretty goddamn good week, all things considered. The worst is obvious. Already dead from the late Juice WRLD with dishonorable mention to I Knew You Were Trouble by Taylor Swift. Sorry, the song wasn't good then or now. Unfortunately, Taylor Swift is stuck up against Silk Sonic for the best of the week, because Put On a Smile is getting the best. But honorable mention, we're going to have a tie between After Last Night with Thundercat and Bootsy Collins, with Nothing New, Taylor's version by Taylor Swift and Phoebe Bridgers. Now to watch it all get swept away next week by Adele and then the holiday onslaught, stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.